His new wife discovered my secret triplets at the Billionaire CEO's Christmas Gala and demanded a DNA test right in front of my family. You've been lying to me for 4 years? Those children are my husband's. Paige's voice cut through the Christmas Gala like a knife, causing every head to turn our way. My 3-year-old triplets clung to my legs, terrified by this stranger's rage. I want a DNA test right now, she screamed, her perfectly manicured finger jabbing the air between us. Right here, in front of everyone. Blake stood frozen between us, his face ashen as he stared at 3 little faces that were mirror images of his own. Have you ever kept a secret so massive that when it finally exploded, it destroyed everything in its path? What would you do if you had to choose between your children's happiness and the truth that could tear their world apart? You are the unsung heroes of impossible choices, the brave souls who faced heartbreaking decisions that no one should ever have to make. May your sacrifices be recognized, your strength celebrated, and your hearts find the peace you've always deserved. If your soul aches for those forced to make impossible choices, hit that like button right now. If you believe everyone deserves a second chance at family, type "Truth Heals" in the comments below. Stay with me till the very end to see if Blake chooses his new wife or the children he never knew existed, and whether some secrets are simply too big to ever be forgiven. I'm Mr. Rich Romance, and today I'm sharing the story of Megan Walsh, a woman whose carefully constructed life came crashing down one snowy December night at the Hawthorne Hotel in Manhattan. The champagne flutes clinked together under the glittering chandeliers of the grand ballroom. I smoothed down my emerald cocktail dress, feeling as out of place as a Subaru in a Ferrari dealership. 3 years had passed since I'd set foot in this world, a world of wealth and privilege I'd once been part of, if only by marriage. You look like you'd rather be anywhere else, a familiar voice said beside me. I turned to find Tara, my former college roommate, and the only reason I'd agreed to attend this Christmas gala. Is it that obvious? Only to someone who knows you're plotting your escape route. Tara laughed, her diamond earrings catching the light. But you promised me an hour. The Ryan Foundation has donated millions to my hospital's pediatric wing. The least we can do is make nice with the benefactors. I nodded, taking another sip of champagne to steady my nerves. An hour. Then I'm trading these heels for my fuzzy slippers and the company of my Netflix account. What I hadn't told Tara, what I hadn't told anyone, was that attending this gala meant risking an encounter with Blake Ryan, my ex-husband and the foundation's namesake. The same Blake Ryan who had no idea I'd given birth to his children 3 months after our divorce was finalized. Not child. Children. Triplets. The secret I'd kept for nearly 4 years weighed on my conscience like a stone as I scanned the room, both dreading and half hoping to catch a glimpse of him. Instead, my gaze landed on an unfamiliar woman wearing a stunning white gown, her arm linked possessively through Blake's as they worked the room. That's her, Tara whispered, following my line of sight. Paige Winters. They got married 6 months ago. She's some hotshot corporate attorney from Boston. The new Mrs. Ryan was everything I wasn't, tall, poised, with the kind of confidence that came from old money and prestigious schools. Blake looked exactly as I remembered him, devastatingly handsome in his tailored tuxedo, his dark hair now touched with silver at the temples, his smile still capable of lighting up a room. I need some air, I murmured, setting down my glass and making my way toward the terrace doors. The December night was bitterly cold, but the chill was preferable to the suffocating anxiety building in my chest. I'd never planned to keep the triplets a secret. When I discovered I was pregnant, Blake and I had already been separated for months, our once passionate marriage crumbling under the weight of his relentless work schedule and my growing resentment of always coming second to his empire building. We met at a charity auction in Chicago 6 years ago. I was there showcasing my illustrations for a children's hospital fundraiser. Blake outbid everyone for my original artwork, then asked me to coffee instead of dinner because he said he wanted to talk without the distraction of a fancy meal. I've never met anyone who sees the world the way you do, he told me that day, his eyes fixed on mine across a tiny table at a corner cafe. Your art makes people feel something real. 3 months later, we were married at his family's estate in Connecticut. I moved into his penthouse overlooking Central Park, and for a while, it was everything I dreamed of. Blake was attentive, passionate, supportive of my career. He'd come home with art supplies he thought I might like, or surprise me with weekend trips to places that might inspire new illustrations. But as Ryan Enterprises expanded, Blake changed. The man who once spent Sunday mornings making pancakes and planning our day became a ghost, appearing only to shower, change, and disappear again. Our conversations shortened to texts about dinner plans he'd inevitably cancel. The intimacy that had once felt so natural became scheduled, then rare, then non-existent. "I need you to understand," he'd say during our arguments. "This is temporary. I'm building something that will last generations. What good is a legacy if you sacrifice everything that matters to build it?" I'd counter, but my words never seemed to penetrate the wall he'd built around himself. The day I gathered my courage to tell him about the pregnancy, I arrived at his office to find him in a closed-door meeting with his lawyers, finalizing our divorce settlement. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I watched him laugh at something his attorney said, looking more relaxed than he had in the final year of our marriage. In that moment, standing in the reception area of Ryan Enterprises with one hand protectively over my still flat stomach, I made a decision. Blake had made it abundantly clear that family wasn't his priority. Why force him into fatherhood when he'd already chosen his company over our marriage? The divorce settlement had been generous enough to provide for my needs, and I had my own career as a children's book illustrator. I would raise this child, I hadn't yet known about the triplets, on my own, away from the pressure and scrutiny of the Ryan family name. Now, leaning against the stone balustrade of the terrace, I questioned that decision for the 1,000th time. Emma, Zoe, and Luke were 3.5 now, bright, curious, and increasingly asking questions about their father. The simple explanations that had sufficed when they were younger wouldn't work much longer. "It's freezing out here." I froze at the sound of Blake's voice behind me. For years melted away in an instant, and my heart hammered against my ribs as I turned to face him. "Blake," I managed, hating how breathless I sounded. "Congratulations on your marriage." He studied my face, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "Thank you. I didn't expect to see you here tonight. Tara invited me. Her hospital benefits from your foundation." "Right." He moved to stand beside me, both of us looking out at the city skyline rather than at each other. "How have you been, Megan?" The question was so inadequate for the gulf between us that I almost laughed. How had I been? Exhausted, overwhelmed, amazed by the 3 little humans who had my eyes and his smile. Guilty for keeping them from him. "I've been well," I said instead. "My illustration work keeps me busy. I saw your name on my niece's favorite bedtime story, the one about the rabbit family." His voice softened. "Your talent always deserved a bigger audience." The compliment caught me off guard. During our marriage, Blake had been supportive but distracted, often forgetting my exhibition openings or portfolio deadlines. That he'd noticed my name on a children's book felt like a small miracle. "Thank you," I said quietly. "And you?" "Besides getting married, I mean. The company's expanding into Europe. It's why we're in New York this week, meetings with potential partners." He paused. "Paige handles our international legal affairs now." Of course she did. The new Mrs. Ryan wasn't just a trophy wife. She was an asset to his business. Something I, with my impractical art degree and preference for creating imaginary worlds over corporate strategizing, had never been. "She seems lovely," I offered, the polite lie-tasting bitter on my tongue. Blake turned to face me fully. "Why are we doing this, Meg? Making small talk like strangers when we used to know everything about each other." The nickname, Meg, hit me like a physical blow. No one had called me that since him. "Because we are strangers now," I said softly. "For years is a long time. Not long enough to forget." The intensity in his gaze made me step back. This was dangerous territory. I'd come to the gala prepared for awkwardness, even hostility, but not this. Not the hint of lingering connection that threatened to unravel my carefully constructed defenses. I should get back inside. Tara will be wondering where I've gone. I moved toward the door, but Blake gently caught my wrist. "Have dinner with me tomorrow, just to catch up properly. Paige has meetings all day, and I..." He stopped, seeming to realize how that sounded. "I'd like to know how you're really doing, not just the polite version." Every instinct told me to refuse. Meeting Blake alone, away from the protective bubble of a public event, meant risking everything. My secret, my children's peaceful existence, the life I'd built independent of the Ryan name and fortune. But a smaller, more insistent voice reminded me that my children deserved to know their father. That keeping them from Blake had been a choice made in pain and fear, not one made with clear-eyed consideration of what was best for Emma, Zoe, and Luke. "I can't do dinner," I said finally. "But I could meet you for coffee. There's a place near Central Park, West Side Brew." "Noon." Relief washed over his features. "Noon. I'll be there." As Blake walked away, I leaned back against the cold stone balustrade, my legs suddenly unsteady. Tomorrow, I would tell him everything. The pregnancy I'd hidden, the children he didn't know existed, the reasons I'd kept them from him. After 4 years of secrets, Blake Ryan was about to discover he was the father of triplets. And his new wife was about to learn that her perfect husband had a ready-made family he knew nothing about. If you've ever had to make a decision that kept you awake at night, wondering if you did the right thing, hit that like button. And if you believe that sometimes the hardest truths are the ones we need to face, share this video with someone who needs to hear that message today. The next morning, I stood in my Brooklyn brownstone's kitchen, pouring Cheerios into 3 identical plastic bowls while my mind raced through every possible scenario for my meeting with Blake. The triplets sat at our small breakfast table, Emma and Luke arguing over a toy dinosaur, while Zoe methodically arranged her cereal in patterns only she understood. "Mommy, is Miss Carla coming today?" Emma asked, her amber eyes, so like her father's, looking up at me expectantly. "Yes, sweetie. Miss Carla will be here soon, and Mommy has to go to a meeting in the city." I smoothed her dark curls, feeling the familiar pang of guilt that came with every half-truth I told my children. Carla was our neighbor, a retired kindergarten teacher who watched the triplets when I had client meetings or deadlines. She arrived right on time, bringing homemade cookies and her endless patience. "You look nice," she commented as I grabbed my coat. "Important meeting? You could say that." I forced a smile. I shouldn't be too long. The subway ride into Manhattan gave me too much time to think. I'd moved to Brooklyn after the divorce, using part of the settlement to buy a modest brownstone in Park Slope. It was worlds away from the luxury I'd known with Blake, but it was ours, a home filled with finger paintings, bedtime stories, and the chaotic joy of raising 3 spirited children. I'd built a good life for us. My children were happy, healthy, loved. My career was thriving. My illustrations now appeared in best-selling children's books. I had friends, a community, a routine that worked. Was I really willing to risk all of that by telling Blake the truth? But what was the alternative? Keep lying until the triplets were old enough to search for their father themselves? Until they resented me for keeping them from him? Until some chance encounter, like last night's gala, forced the truth into the open in an even more painful way? West Side Brew was busy with the lunch crowd when I arrived. I chose a table in the back corner, ordering a latte to calm my nerves. At exactly noon, Blake walked in, scanning the room until his eyes found mine. He looked different in daylight, more human somehow, less the untouchable CEO, and more the man I'd once loved. "You came," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. I said I would. I wrapped my hands around my mug, needing something to anchor me. "Megan, about last night." "Blake, I need to tell you something." I interrupted, knowing if I didn't say it now, I might lose my nerve entirely. He fell silent, waiting. After our divorce, I discovered I was pregnant. The words hung between us, heavy with 4 years of secrets. I didn't know when I signed the papers, and by the time I found out, you seemed relieved to be free of our marriage. Blake's expression shifted from confusion to shock. "You had a baby?" "My baby." "Babies," I corrected quietly. "Triplets. 2 girls and a boy. They're 3.5 now." The color drained from his face. For a long moment, he just stared at me, his mouth slightly open, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Triplets," he repeated, the words sounding foreign on his tongue. "I have 3 children I've never met." "Yes. And you didn't think I deserved to know?" His voice rose slightly, drawing glances from nearby tables. "I came to tell you," I said, the defensive edge in my tone surprising even me. "The day I found out, you were finalizing our divorce, laughing with your lawyers. You looked happier than you had in months. So you made a unilateral decision to keep my children from me?" The shock in his eyes was hardening into anger. "For 4 years, Megan? For years. I did what I thought was best at the time," I said, though the justification sounded hollow even to my own ears. "You made it clear that your company was your priority. The last thing you wanted was a family tying you down. You had no right to make that choice for me. Blake's hands clenched into fists on the table. No right to keep my children a secret. I know that now, I admit it. That's why I'm telling you. They're asking questions about their father. They deserve to know you, and you deserve to know them. What are their names? He asked after a long pause, his voice tight with controlled emotion. Emma, Zoe, and Luke. Luke, he repeated softly. After my grandfather? I nodded. Despite everything, I'd wanted that connection for my son, that link to the family history I was keeping from him. I want to see them, Blake said, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. Today, Blake, I don't think rushing into this is. 4 years, Megan. His eyes bored into mine. I've already missed 4 years. I'm not missing another day. I knew that look. It was the same determined expression he'd worn when building Ryan Enterprises from a startup into a billion-dollar company. Blake Ryan didn't back down when he wanted something, and right now, he wanted to meet his children. Okay, I conceded. But we need to be careful. They don't know about you yet, not really. I've only told them their daddy lives far away and can't be with us. Another lie, he said bitterly. A simplification for 3-year-olds, I countered. I was going to tell them the truth when they were old enough to understand. Blake stood abruptly. Let's go. Now, what about Paige? I asked, the question stopping him mid-stride. Your wife should probably know about this before you meet them. A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. I'll deal with Paige later. This is between us right now. As we left the coffee shop, I texted Carla that I was bringing a guest home and would explain everything when I arrived. The subway ride back to Brooklyn was tense. Blake and I sitting side by side without speaking, the weight of our shared past and complicated future pressing down on us. I stole glances at him, trying to imagine how my children would react to this stranger who shared their eyes, their smile, their stubborn determination. Would they see what I once saw in him, the warmth beneath the ambition, the vulnerability behind the success? Or would they only know the distant, distracted man he'd become in our final year together? When we reached my brownstone, Blake paused on the sidewalk, staring up at the modest 3-story building with an unreadable expression. This is where you live? He asked, his tone carefully neutral. This is our home, I replied, emphasizing the word. It's not your penthouse, but it's perfect for us. I led him up the steps, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure he could hear it. Before I could even get my key in the lock, the door swung open to reveal Carla, her kind face creased with concern. Megan is everything. She stopped mid-sentence, her eyes widening as she took in Blake standing behind me. Carla, this is Blake Ryan, I said, the introduction feeling surreal. Blake, this is Carla Martinez, our neighbor and the Triplets' favorite person. Second favorite, Carla corrected with a nervous smile. After their mama. Blake nodded politely, but his attention had already shifted past her to the sound of children's laughter coming from inside. His face paled slightly, and I saw his Adam's apple bob as he swallowed hard. They're in the living room, Carla said quietly. I told them Mommy was bringing a special friend home. I thanked her, promising to call later, and she slipped past us with one last curious glance at Blake. Taking a deep breath, I led him into the entryway of my home, with its coat hooks at child height and a bench covered in tiny shoes. Wait here, I whispered. Let me prepare them. Blake looked like he wanted to argue, but nodded stiffly. I walked into the living room, where my 3 little whirlwinds were building a block tower that reached almost to Emma's chin. Mommy, Zoe spotted me first, abandoning the tower to run into my arms. Look what we built. I corrected automatically, hugging her close. It's amazing, sweetie. Luke and Emma joined the hug, their small arms wrapping around my legs. I knelt down to their level, my heart in my throat. Remember I told you Mommy was bringing a special friend home? I began, searching for words simple enough for them to understand yet honest enough to ease my conscience. Well, he's here now, and he's very excited to meet you. Is he a prince? Emma asked, her imagination always running wild from the fairy tales we read. No, honey. I hesitated, then decided to just say it. He's your daddy. 3 pairs of identical amber eyes widened in perfect synchronization. Our daddy, Luke whispered, his little face a mixture of confusion and wonder. The one in the pictures? I nodded, my throat tight. There was a framed photo of Blake and me on our wedding day tucked away in my bedroom drawer. I'd shown it to them once when Luke had asked why other kids at preschool had daddies, and they didn't. Can we see him? Zoe asked, always the bravest of the three. Yes, he's waiting right now. I stood up, holding out my hands. Shall we go say hello? They nodded solemnly, suddenly shy. I led them into the entryway, where Blake stood exactly where I'd left him, looking more nervous than I'd ever seen him, even more than the day he'd pitched to his first major investors. The moment he saw the triplets, his composure cracked completely. His hand flew to his mouth, and I saw tears spring to his eyes as he took in three little faces that were unmistakably his own in miniature. "Oh my God," he whispered. The triplets stared back with equal fascination, hiding partially behind my legs but peering around with undisguised curiosity. "Emma, Zoe, Luke," I said gently, "this is your daddy, Blake." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Luke, my quiet, thoughtful boy, stepped forward. "Do you like dinosaurs?" he asked seriously. Blake let out a choked laugh, dropping to one knee to meet Luke at eye level. "I love dinosaurs, especially T-Rex. T-Rex is my favorite too." Luke's face lit up. "Want to see my collection?" "I'd love that," Blake said, his voice thick with emotion. That was all it took. The ice broken. Emma and Zoe surged forward too, suddenly full of questions and eager to show this new person their toys, their books, their world. I stood back, watching as Blake was swept into their orbit, answering questions and admiring artwork with a genuine enthusiasm I hadn't seen from him in years. It was both beautiful and heartbreaking to witness. This instant connection between father and children, this natural bond that had been denied for 4 years because of my decision. "They have your eyes," Blake said softly when the kids ran to their room to retrieve more treasures to show him. "And your smile." "They have your determination," I replied. "And your dimples." He looked around the living room, taking in the colorful artwork on the walls, the bookshelf overflowing with children's literature, the basket of toys in the corner. "You've done an amazing job with them, Meg. They're incredible." The compliment caught me off guard. I'd expected anger, resentment, maybe even legal threats, not this quiet acknowledgement. "Thank you," I managed. "They make it easy to be a good mom." The triplets returned in a whirlwind of excitement, arms full of books and toys they deemed essential for their father to see. Blake sat cross-legged on the floor, giving each child his full attention as they showed him their treasures. I watched in amazement as the man who couldn't spare an hour for dinner with his wife during our marriage spent the afternoon building block towers and having tea parties with 3 toddlers he'd just met. Hours passed in a blur of laughter and stories. I ordered pizza for dinner, and we ate around the coffee table, the triplets chattering nonstop, competing for Blake's attention. He soaked it all in, asking questions, learning their personalities, catching glimpses of the years he'd missed. It was during this impromptu dinner that the front door suddenly burst open. "Blake, are you here?" your assistant said. Paige Winters stopped dead in the doorway to the living room, her designer handbag dangling forgotten from her arm as she took in the scene before her. Her husband sitting on the floor, surrounded by 3 children who looked exactly like him, with me, his ex-wife, serving juice in plastic cups. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Blake stood slowly, pizza slice still in hand. "Paige, I can explain." "Explain what?" Her eyes darted from child to child, the resemblance registering with visible impact. "Who are these children?" "They're mine," Blake said simply. "Our children," he amended, glancing at me. "Mine and Megan's." Paige's perfectly composed face crumpled for just a second before she regained control. "That's not possible. We've been married for 6 months. You would have told me if you had children." "I didn't know," Blake said. "I just found out today." Paige's gaze snapped to me, suddenly sharp with suspicion. "You expect me to believe that? That you had his children and never told him? For what? For years." "It's complicated," I began, but she cut me off with a harsh laugh. "I'm sure it is. Especially the part where you show up at our foundation's gala, reconnect with my husband, and suddenly produce 3 children who conveniently look like him." "Paige," Blake warned, but she was beyond listening. "You've been lying to me for 4 years? Those children are my husband's." Her voice cut through the room like a knife, causing the triplets to shrink back against me in fear. "I want a DNA test right now. Right here, in front of everyone." "Lower your voice," I said firmly, wrapping protective arms around my children. "You're scaring them." "I'm scaring them." Paige's laugh was brittle. You've been lying to them their entire lives about who their father is, and I'm the one scaring them. That's enough. Blake stepped between us, his voice taking on the authoritative tone I remembered from boardroom confrontations. Paige, this isn't the time or place. When is the time, Blake? After you've played happy family with your ex-wife? After you've bonded with children who might not even be yours? They're mine, he said with absolute certainty. Look at them, Paige. She did, her gaze sweeping over Emma, Zoe, and Luke, who were watching the adults with wide, frightened eyes. For a moment, her expression softened, but then her lawyer's instincts seemed to take over. I want proof, she insisted, though her voice had lost some of its edge. DNA tests. And I want to know why she kept them from you all this time. What was she after? Money? Your attention? Some twisted revenge? I wasn't after anything, I said, struggling to keep my own temper in check. I made a mistake not telling him, but it wasn't about money or revenge. Then what was it about? Paige demanded. I looked at Blake, at the children clinging to my legs, at the life I'd built that was now collapsing around me. It was about protecting them from exactly this kind of scene. If you've ever had to face the consequences of a decision you made years ago, hit that like button. And if you believe that sometimes the hardest conversations are the ones most worth having, subscribe to my channel for more stories that explore the complicated reality of love, family, and second chances. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Paige stood rigid by the doorway, her elegant coat still on, as if she couldn't bear to make herself comfortable in my home. Blake had moved closer to the triplets and me, his protective stance making it clear where his priorities suddenly lay. I think, Blake said carefully, that we all need to take a step back and remember there are children present. Emma, always sensitive to atmosphere, had tears welling in her eyes. Mommy, why is the pretty lady mad? Before I could answer, Zoe piped up with the brutal honesty only a 3-year-old could manage. Is she mad 'cause you're our daddy's wife now and Mommy used to be? The innocent question landed like a grenade in the middle of our standoff. Paige's face went through a complicated series of emotions before settling on something between hurt and resignation. Yes, she said finally, her voice softer as she addressed my daughter directly. That's part of why I'm upset. I didn't know your daddy had children. We didn't know we had a daddy, Luke offered helpfully. Not a real one that could come to our house. Just the one in Mommy's picture. Paige's eyes flicked to me, a question in them that I couldn't quite interpret. Was it accusation? Curiosity? A moment of unexpected empathy? I think, I said, gathering my courage, that the grown-ups need to have a conversation. Emma, Zoe, Luke, how about you go play in your room for a little while? I'll come get you when we're done talking. Can Daddy come see our room? Emma asked, her tears forgotten in the excitement of showing off her domain. Blake looked at me, then at Paige, clearly torn. Why don't you take them up, show them where to go, I suggested to Blake. Then come back down so we can all talk. He nodded gratefully and led the triplets upstairs, their chatter fading as they ascended. When he returned a few minutes later, Paige had removed her coat, but remained standing, as if sitting would somehow legitimize the situation. I think I deserve an explanation, she said, her lawyer's composure firmly back in place. From both of you. I told you. I just found out today, Blake said, running a hand through his hair. A gesture I remembered from our marriage, a sign he was genuinely stressed. Megan told me at the coffee shop, and I insisted on coming here immediately to meet them. And you? Paige turned to me. Why keep this secret for so long, only to reveal it now, right after we got married, coincidentally? I sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. It wasn't about your marriage. I didn't even know Blake had remarried until Tara told me at the gala last night. Then why now, she pressed. Because they're asking questions I can't answer anymore, I admitted. Because keeping the secret was starting to hurt them. Because, I looked at Blake, because it was wrong to keep them from him, no matter what happened between us. So you admit it was wrong, Paige said, as if scoring a point in court. Yes, it was wrong. The admission hung in the air between us. I made the decision when I was hurt and angry and convinced Blake wouldn't want the responsibility of children. You never gave me the chance to decide that for myself, Blake said quietly. No, I didn't. I met his gaze directly, and I'm sorry for that. Truly sorry. Paige finally sat down in the armchair across from me, her perfect posture a stark contrast to my emotional slump. I still want DNA tests. Fine. I agreed, too tired to argue. Whatever you need to feel secure about this. It's not about feeling secure, she snapped. It's about establishing facts before Blake gets too attached to children who might not be his. They're mine, Blake said with absolute certainty. Anyone with eyes can see that. Appearances can be deceiving, Paige insisted. And given that she hid them for 4 years, forgive me if I don't trust her word now. I understand your skepticism, I said, trying to keep my voice level. But I've never been with anyone else. They're Blake's children. Paige studied me for a long moment, her legal training evident in her assessing gaze. Let's say they are. What do you want now? Money? Shared custody? What's your endgame here, Megan? The question caught me off guard. I hadn't thought beyond telling Blake the truth, beyond lifting the weight of secrecy from my shoulders. I don't have an endgame, I said honestly. I just want what's best for my children. If that includes having their father in their lives, then that's what I want. Our children, Blake corrected gently. Yes, I acknowledged. Our children. Paige's phone buzzed, and she checked it with a frown. My car's outside. I need some time to process this. She stood, gathering her coat and bag. Blake, are you coming? He hesitated, glancing toward the stairs where the triplets were playing. I should say goodbye to them first. Of course you should, she said, her tone clipped. I'll wait in the car. After she left, Blake turned to me with a sigh. I'm sorry about that. This isn't how I wanted any of this to go. How did you want it to go? I asked, genuinely curious. I don't know. Not like this. He ran his hand through his hair again. I need to talk to Paige, try to make her understand. But I want you to know, I'm not walking away from them. Not now, not ever. I never thought you would, I admitted. Not once you knew about them. That's why I was afraid to tell you. Blake's eyebrows rose in surprise. You thought I'd try to take them from you? You're Blake Ryan. You get what you want. Always have. I shrugged, the old hurt surfacing despite my best efforts. And what you wanted was never me. That's not fair, Megan. Isn't it? You chose your company over our marriage every single day for a year. Why would I think you'd choose me? Choose us, over anything else. Before he could respond, the sound of small feet thundering down the stairs interrupted us. The triplets burst into the room, full of energy despite the late hour. Daddy, are you leaving? Zoe asked, her lower lip already trembling at the prospect. Blake knelt down to their level. Just for tonight, princess. But I'll come back tomorrow, if that's okay with your mom. 3 pairs of eyes turned to me, pleading silently. How could I refuse? Of course, I said. Maybe we could go to the park, if the weather's nice. The park, Luke exclaimed. I can show you my running speed. I'm the fastest. No, I'm the fastest, Emma countered. You're both fast, Blake assured them with a smile. And I can't wait to see. He hugged each child goodbye, promising to return the next day, then stood to face me. We need to talk more, he said quietly. About arrangements, about the future. I know. I walked him to the door, conscious of the triplets watching our every move. Good luck with Paige. Thanks. I'm going to need it. He hesitated, then added, for what it's worth, Meg, you've done an incredible job with them. They're amazing kids. The compliment warmed something inside me that had been cold for a very long time. Thank you. After Blake left, I went through our bedtime routine on autopilot, my mind racing with the day's events. The triplets were too excited to settle easily, full of questions about their daddy and when he would return. Is he going to live with us now? Emma asked as I tucked her in. No, sweetie. Daddy has his own home with his wife, Paige. The pretty lady who was mad, Zoe clarified. Yes, that's her. She was just surprised today, that's all. Will she be our mommy too? Luke wondered. The innocent question stabbed at my heart. No, honey. I'm your mommy. Paige is your daddy's wife. It's a little complicated, but you'll understand better when you're older. Once they were finally asleep, I collapsed onto my own bed, emotionally drained. My phone buzzed with a text from Blake. Made it home. Paige and I are talking. I meant what I said. I'm not walking away. See you tomorrow at 10? I texted back a simple yes, then set my phone aside and stared at the ceiling, wondering how my carefully constructed life had unraveled so completely in just 24 hours. The DNA test Paige insisted on was scheduled for the following week. Blake came to the park as promised, then returned the next day, and the next, unable to stay away from the children he'd just discovered. Each visit was awkward at first, then increasingly natural as the triplets accepted him into their lives with the easy adaptability of childhood. Paige kept her distance during that first week, processing the shock in her own way. I couldn't blame her. 6 months into her marriage, she'd discovered her husband had 3 children with his ex-wife. Children he hadn't known about, but children nonetheless. It was a lot for anyone to absorb. The day of the DNA test, we met at a private medical facility in Manhattan. Blake insisted on being present, standing protectively near the triplets as the technician gently swabbed the insides of their cheeks. Paige watched from across the room, her face carefully neutral. The results will be ready in 3 business days, the technician informed us. Rush it, Paige said. Money is no object. 2 days later, Blake called me. The results are in. Can I come over? Of course. He arrived with Paige beside him, her presence surprising me. This was the first time she'd returned to my home since the initial confrontation. The triplets were at preschool, giving us privacy for whatever was coming next. The tests confirm what we already knew, Blake said without preamble. I'm their father. I nodded, relief washing over me despite my certainty. Some small part of me had feared a mistake, a lab error that would shatter the fragile new connections forming between Blake and the children. So where do we go from here? I asked, looking between them. Paige stepped forward, her expression softer than I'd seen it before. I owe you an apology, Megan. My reaction that first day was unprofessional and unkind. The admission clearly cost her something. I could see the struggle behind her composed exterior. You were shocked, I acknowledged. Anyone would be. Yes, but that's no excuse for how I behaved in front of the children. She straightened her shoulders. Blake and I have had many discussions about this situation. We've decided to present a united front for the sake of Emma, Zoe, and Luke. A united front, I repeated, trying to understand what she meant. Blake took over, his expression earnest. We want to be part of their lives, Meg. Real, consistent parts. Not just weekend visits or holiday appearances. What exactly are you proposing? I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. Despite Blake's assurances that he wouldn't try to take the children from me, old fears died hard. Shared custody, he said. Not legally, not yet, anyway, but practically. We'd like to have them stay with us 2 weekends a month to start, maybe work up to more as they get comfortable. We've converted the guest wing at our Connecticut house, Paige added. Each child will have their own room, decorated however they like. There's a playroom, access to the pool, all with proper safety measures, of course. The casual mention of their Connecticut estate, a sprawling property I'd visited once during our marriage, highlighted the vast difference between what Blake could offer the triplets materially and what I provided in our modest Brooklyn home. I see, I said carefully. And you're both on board with this arrangement? Paige met my gaze directly. I won't pretend this is what I envisioned when I married Blake. But they're innocent children who deserve to know their father. And Blake deserves to be part of their lives. Her measured response surprised me. I'd expected resentment, perhaps even ongoing hostility, not this pragmatic acceptance. What about your work schedule? I asked Blake. The company always came first before. What's changed? I have, he said simply. Finding out I'm a father. It shifts your perspective. I've already started delegating more, restructuring my schedule. The company will survive if I'm not there 70 hours a week. The irony wasn't lost on me. The changes I'd begged for during our marriage, the balance I'd pleaded with him to find, he was now implementing for children he'd known for barely a week. The triplets have preschool 3 days a week, I said, thinking practically. They have friends here, routines, activities they love. We're not suggesting uprooting them, Blake assured me. Just adding to their world, not replacing what you've built. I took a deep breath, considering their proposal. Part of me wanted to refuse out of pure self-preservation. Having Blake and Paige in our lives permanently meant constant reminders of what I'd lost, what might have been. It meant sharing my children with a woman who had everything I once had, Blake's name, his attention, his commitment. But another part of me, the part that had lain awake countless nights questioning my decision to keep the triplets from their father, recognized that this was what I'd wanted all along, for my children to have both parents in their lives, even if those parents weren't together. We should start slowly, I said finally. Maybe one day visit first, then work up to overnights. They've never spent a night away from me. The relief on Blake's face was palpable. Whatever works best for them. We'll follow your lead on the timeline. And we should establish some ground rules. I continued, finding my footing. Consistent bedtimes, limited screen time, the same discipline approaches in both homes. Absolutely. Paige agreed, surprising me again with her willingness to collaborate. We want continuity for them, not confusion. We spent the next hour discussing logistics, preferences, and boundaries. It was surreal, sitting in my living room with my ex-husband and his new wife, planning a co-parenting arrangement none of us had anticipated a week ago. Yet somehow, it felt right, like we were finally addressing a wrong that had festered too long. When the triplets returned from preschool with Carla, they were delighted to find Blake waiting. Their initial shyness around Paige melted quickly when she produced 3 identical stuffed elephants, apparently remembering that Luke had mentioned elephants were his favorite animal during their brief first meeting. "I thought you might like these," she said, kneeling to their level as she handed out the gifts. "Your daddy told me you each like different colors, so I got blue for Luke, purple for Emma, and green for Zoe." The fact that she'd already learned their color preferences touched me unexpectedly. It would have been easy for Paige to view my children as an inconvenience, an unwelcome complication in her new marriage. Instead, she was making a genuine effort to connect with them. "Thank you," I said quietly as the triplets excitedly showed Blake their new treasures. "That was thoughtful." Paige shrugged, but I caught a glimpse of vulnerability beneath her polished exterior. "I have 7 nieces and nephews. Children have always been part of my life plan, just not quite like this. Life rarely goes according to plan," I offered, thinking of my own unexpected journey to motherhood. "No," she agreed with a small smile. "It certainly doesn't." That evening, after Blake and Paige left with promises to return on Saturday for their first official day together, I sat on the edge of Emma's bed during our nightly story time. "Did you have fun with Daddy and Paige today?" I asked, smoothing her dark curls away from her forehead. She nodded sleepily, clutching her new purple elephant. "Paige said she's going to teach me to swim in their big pool. And Daddy's going to build us a treehouse." "That sounds wonderful, sweetie." Mommy, her amber eyes, so like Blake's, blinked up at me. "Are you sad that Daddy lives with Paige now instead of us?" The innocent question caught me off guard. "No, honey. Your daddy and I decided a long time ago that we were better not living together. But we both love you very, very much." Paige said she's not trying to be our mommy. Zoe chimed in from her bed across the room. "She said we already have the best mommy in the world." Tears pricked at my eyes, unexpected emotion welling up at this glimpse of Paige's private conversation with my daughters. "That was nice of her to say. She said she wants to be our friend," Luke added from the doorway, where he was supposed to be brushing his teeth. "And that families come in lots of different shapes." "She's right about that," I agreed, wondering when Paige had found time for these conversations amid the chaos of the afternoon. "Now, let's finish our story so you can get some sleep." Later that night, I received a text from Blake. "Thank you for today. For everything, really. I know this isn't easy for any of us, but seeing them with you, in the home you've created, I'm in awe of what you've done, Meg. Truly." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "They're amazing kids. They deserve to have all of us working together for them." His reply came quickly. "We will. I promise." As I set my phone aside, I realized something had shifted inside me, a loosening of the tight knot of guilt and justification I'd carried for 4 years. Telling Blake the truth hadn't fixed everything. Our path forward would be complicated, messy, full of emotional landmines none of us could anticipate. But for the first time since those 2 pink lines appeared on a pregnancy test 4 years ago, I felt like I'd made the right choice. Not the choice to keep the triplets a secret, but the choice to finally bring that secret into the light. The following Saturday dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for the triplets' first official day with Blake and Paige. I packed their backpacks with changes of clothes, favorite toys, and the comfort items they couldn't sleep without, trying to anticipate every need even though they wouldn't be staying overnight yet. "Are you sure you'll be okay?" Tara asked over coffee that morning. She'd stopped by to provide moral support, knowing how difficult this day would be for me. First day without them since they were born. "I'll survive," I said, though the thought of 8 hours without my children felt like an eternity. "They need this. They need to know their father." "And what about you? What do you need?" I considered the question as I zipped up the last backpack. "I need to know I'm doing the right thing. That keeping them from Blake was the mistake, not letting them go now." "For what it's worth," Tara said, squeezing my hand. I think you're doing something incredibly brave. And incredibly right. When Blake's Range Rover pulled up outside, the triplets raced to the window in excitement. They'd been talking nonstop about visiting Daddy and Paige's big house since we'd explained the plan earlier in the week. Remember, I said, kneeling to straighten Luke's collar. Mommy's just a phone call away if you need anything. And I'll be right here when you get back tonight. We know, Mommy, Emma said with the exaggerated patience of a child explaining something to a clueless adult. We're just going to Daddy's house, not the moon. I laughed despite the lump in my throat. You're right. Silly me. Blake and Paige came to the door together, both dressed casually in jeans and sweaters, a deliberate choice, I suspected, to make the triplets feel comfortable. Ready for our big adventure? Blake asked, high-fiving each child in turn. We've got the whole day planned, Paige added. Swimming, a picnic lunch, maybe even horseback riding if you're feeling brave. Horses. Zoe's eyes widened in delight. Real ones, Paige confirmed. Very gentle, perfect for beginners. As the triplets gathered their backpacks and chattered about the day ahead, Blake pulled me aside. We'll have them back by 7, as promised, he said. And we'll call if there are any issues, but I'm sure there won't be. I know you'll take good care of them, I said, surprised to find I meant it. Whatever our past, Blake's devotion to the triplets over the past week had been absolute. We will, he assured me. Then, more hesitantly, would you like to come with us? There's plenty of room, and it might make the transition easier. The invitation caught me off guard. I think it's better if they have this time with just you, to establish your own relationship without me as a buffer. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. Another time, maybe. Maybe, I agreed, though we both knew how complicated that would be. Watching the Range Rover drive away with my 3 children waving excitedly from the back seat was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. Tara stood beside me on the sidewalk, her arm around my shoulders in silent support. They'll be fine, she said as the car disappeared around the corner. Better than fine. They'll have an amazing day. I know, I said, wiping away a stray tear. That's what makes it so hard. The day stretched endlessly before me. 8 hours without sticky hands pulling at my clothes, without constant questions and demands for snacks, without the background noise of cartoons and squabbles over toys. I tried to enjoy the rare solitude, catching up on work, taking a long bath, even watching a movie without interruption. But by mid-afternoon, I was checking my phone every 5 minutes, waiting for updates. Blake had sent a few pictures, the triplets feeding carrots to gentle ponies, all 3 splashing in an indoor pool with floaties, a picnic spread on a checkered blanket in what looked like an immaculate garden. They looked happy, radiant, even. And why wouldn't they be? Blake and Paige could offer them experiences I could only dream of providing. Private swimming lessons, horseback riding, vacations to exotic locations. Would my modest Brooklyn life seem dull in comparison? Would they eventually prefer their weekends at the Connecticut estate to their everyday life with me? If you've ever had to share your children with someone who could give them more than you could, hit that like button. And if you believe that love and presence matter more than material things, subscribe to my channel for stories that remind us what truly matters in this complicated journey we call life.